Now, Misfits Boxing continues to divide opinion, attracting millions of viewers through celebrity fights, controversy, and viral moments. But is it helping boxing to grow, or is it damaging its credibility? From Tommy Fury versus Eddie Hall to major controversies, we explore the future of crossover boxing. Okay, so I'm going to use the following format for this. I'm going to go through some questions and talk about this from what could be considered a philosophical perspective. So let's start by explaining the Tommy Fury Eddie Hall fight on Misfits. So that fight basically was billed as the Beauty versus the Beast. That was the main event. Now, Hall's strategy was to use his size and his power advantage, while Fury really used a lot of movement, boxing technique, and improved experience. Now, Hall created some moments and some success early on, but Fury controlled more of the action and deserved the decision. Ironically, the higher boxing IQ of Fury was prevailing in this fight. I say ironic because boxing IQ and Misfits Boxing, they don't always have a relationship, respectfully. So the next question is why? Why are rappers going into Misfits Boxing? Why are they doing that? I assume many rappers, they see Misfits as a platform, and this platform can do various things. It can increase their profile, earn significant purses, promote their music, but promote their music indirectly and reach new audiences, because Misfits potentially has a new audience for them. Misfits is important to remember. It's important to remember has evolved. It's evolved beyond influences, and now it attracts musicians, MMA fighters, reality TV stars, and other entertainers. And the reason for this is because of its large DAZN audience and its social media exposure. So fighters such as Afghan Dan have used Misfits. They've used it to expand their brand, which goes beyond the music. So this is why I think rappers are collaborating with Misfits Boxing, for want of a better word. So let's talk about the biting incident that occurred. And is biting unacceptable in boxing, or how unacceptable is it? Biting, of course, has happened before in boxing. The biggest reference is Evander Holyfield-Mike Tyson, the rematch. But there are other references. For example, Carl Froch versus Andre Ward. Biting, of course, is considered one of the most unacceptable acts in combat sports, mainly because it presents a safety risk and violates the rules of boxing and MMA. It's not permissible in either sport. And like I said, incidents involving biting are often compared to the infamous bite by Mike Tyson, which resulted in disqualification and widespread condemnation. So the biting incident that took place, which was the Jordan McCann fight, apologies if my pronunciation is incorrect there, that was unacceptable. However, the one concession is that the rapper did apologize for it, and he probably did it because he was so tired. That doesn't make it okay, but that kind of justifies, that doesn't make it okay. That's not a justification, but that's to understand why he did it. He was very, very tired, and it was an irrational thing to do. It was a wrong thing to do. And again, we can understand why he did it, but it's also important that Misfits Boxing condemns this type of action, because it's really not acceptable in any type of boxing. So then the next question is, Misfits just purely boxing entertainment? And I guess this is one of the biggest debates around the promotion. I guess boxing purists will say, well, there isn't a debate. But Misfits markets itself. So Misfits markets itself as boxing entertainment rather than traditional boxing, which is the correct focus. So the focus here is on the personalities. The focus is on the personalities, the rivalries, and the virality. And entertainers, they understand the importance of the virality, the attention economy. However, many fighters still train seriously, and some of the bouts, not all, but some of them are genuinely competitive. So it's important to acknowledge both things. Both things can be true. That doesn't mean that both things are true in this instance. So the promotion tries to balance sporting competition with entertainment value, but it would appear that if you look at the last event, the heavy emphasis was on the entertainment. It was the entertainment, I would say, that was tipping the scale, as opposed to the mastery of boxing. And then my next question was, what was the Anthony Taylor Tiger Balm issue? There was really a huge reaction from Anthony Taylor, a huge reaction. And following Anthony Taylor's fight with Matt Floyd, Taylor basically alleged that Floyd had been rubbing Tiger Balm or a similar substance into his gloves and body during the contest. The fight was ultimately ruled a no contest, and the accusation became a major talking point, an absolute major talking point after the event. At the moment, the full context or circumstance remains disputed, but the controversy has led to calls for an investigation and an official statement. There was an allegation, and at this time it is an allegation, that there was Tiger Balm either on the body, and when I say, there was Tiger Balm on Matt Floyd's body, and he had to take a shower to wash it off. That was the allegation. I don't know if that allegation is true. Now, again, if you have Tiger Balm on your body, that is acceptable. And I guess you could make an argument that Tiger Balm could accidentally get on the gloves, and that wouldn't be intentional cheating. That would be an unfortunate situation. However, I've seen on the internet, particularly in the YouTube comment section, that there seems to be this prevailing notion that Anthony Taylor just wanted out of the fight. Now, it's funny because Anthony Taylor has lost before. He's been beaten up before, and he didn't make that same allegation. So it would seem to me that this is an unusual, it's an unusual action for someone to take, for someone not to have that previous history of opting out of a fight. And again, I'm not saying that there was any cheating. Maybe there was something intentional that happened, that the Tiger Balm was put on the body and then it was put onto the gloves. But clearly, for Misfits Boxing credibility, they should look into the matter, and they should be able to not only look into the matter, but have a rational reason as to what happened, and then have a suitable conclusion to the matter. So was this good for Misfits Boxing? Let's first unpack the question. We're not asking if it's good for boxing. We're asking if it's good for Misfits Boxing. And as usual, there's some context and there's arguments on both sides. So let's deal with the argument that it's good for Misfits Boxing, not boxing. So the argument that it's good is that it generated major social media attention. There was elements of virality. That's expected. It created headlines beyond the boxing audience, and it helped sell the event and increase the visibility of Misfits. And the Fury versus Hall situation, or the Fury versus Hall fight, that attracted mainstream sports coverage. And you could make the argument, and I don't think you could even go against this argument, that Fury and Hall were the competent and reputable names on the card. And that's not to disrespect anyone else. Let me put it another way. Fury and Eddie Hall, they brought the most credibility to the show. So what's the argument that it wasn't good for Misfits Boxing? You could make the argument that the controversy, and there was quite a lot of controversy, and you could argue that the controversy can damage the credibility of Misfits Boxing. Not the credibility of boxing, maybe some could make that argument, but definitely the credibility of Misfits Boxing. So you could make that argument. And then there's the other philosophical point is all controversies good? Because some people say all publicity is good publicity, but is that premise true? Does there become a point where some controversies create more damage than actual, so it's like it creates more harm and is more harmful than it is beneficial? I'm not sure. I think the ear biting, the headbutt, those type of things, they are not positive, especially if you want Misfits to be taken seriously as an art. And, the incidents and the rule breaking, again, it overshadows the fights. I guess some critics could argue that Misfits is prioritizing the viral moments over competitive integrity. But that's logical, because in a capitalist society where the onus is to make money, the viral moments in the attention economy make sense. So it's understandable that viral moments are over competitive integrity, but the question is there any competitive integrity? So if there's no competitive integrity, that's a problem. But if you have viral moments here, but the competitive integrity is here, or the integrity is here, then at least we have some form of balance. It's how far that balance is in disarray, I guess, or how far up is the virality over the integrity. And I guess there's a difference between competitive integrity and integrity. Does Boxing Misfits have any integrity? Should it have any integrity? So let's put our cards all on the table and let's go through some of the statements one by one. So Tommy Fury beat Eddie Hall. That's an objective truth. He did this by using his movement and simply by outboxing Eddie Hall. Eddie Hall was huge, absolutely huge, even with the reduced weight, and visually it looked like a real spectacle. There were some interesting elements to this fight. It was almost like Tommy Fury's movement against Eddie Hall. I guess the question was, could Eddie Hall trap Tommy Fury to land those big punches? And predominantly, yes, he did land some punches, but Tommy Fury was able to implement his plan more effectively. It's important to realize that Eddie Hall, I would assume, can punch really, really hard and is a very strong and big man. And that was a task for Tommy Fury because he had to be focused at all times. The danger was very, very real. The strength and the punching power from Eddie would be extraordinarily significant, even as a professional boxer who's taken many punches. How many fighters you fight at that size? Probably zero. Saying that though, Tommy Fury looked very big. He looked very big, very strong as well. But strong in relation to the regular boxer, not strong in relation to Eddie Hall, who's exponentially off the scale when it comes to strength and power. So the next statement is, rappers join Misfit to gain exposure, grow their brand, earn money through high-profile crossover fights. And I think this is an interesting one because when we talk about rappers and hip-hop comprises of many elements. There's social commentary, there's commentary what's going on around them, there's objective truth, there's subjective truth, there's engaging in certain activities, there's observing certain activities, there's conscious rapping. Hip-hop is very diverse in its subject matter. But even though we have the diversity, put it this way, you have NWA, but then you have Public Enemy and Wu-Tang Clan. So you've got a massive diversity. When we speak within the British context, again, you've got that loads of diversity. However, I would argue that within British hip-hop, even by today's standards, hip-hop has a massive connection with masculinity and being powerful and being strong. What am I going on about? This is my point. When you are a rapper, particularly a rapper that talks about toughness and strength, going in a ring is a risk to your brand, because if you get knocked out or beaten up, that viral moment will tarnish your music. Now, of course, it depends on what you portray in your music. If you portray to be a tough person or someone who's highly masculine, and if your audience believes that, then a viral moment of you getting knocked out will tarnish your credibility. So rappers take massive risks. However, I'm assuming that the exposure and growing their brand is significant. Remember, there's money through the front door and there's money through the back door. Let me explain. Money through the front door is your purse. So let's say, allegedly, the last rapper got paid 50 grand. That's a lot of money. But then there's money through the back door. This could be increased listens on Spotify. increased viewership on YouTube, but it also could mean that you're deeply embedded in the attention economy. Maybe it means you get more money for shows, or you get more shows. So when you look at the economic pie, there's different slices to it. But sometimes you have to ask yourself, is the juice worth the squeeze? Because there's a big brand risk here. So was the biting incident unacceptable? Clearly, I think the objective answer to that is yes, but there is context. It's important to remember that that person, even if they've been in scary situations before, they haven't been in that situation before in a boxing ring. That's my assumption. So considering they were in that situation and they were tired, they were taking punches, you know, there was a huge crowd, a huge buzz, that's an unusual situation. And therefore, even though the act was reprehensible or the act was wrong, you could understand someone acting irrational in that moment. The one good thing is that I believe that he did apologize. So once it's done, it's done. You can't undo it. The milk has been spoiled. However, you apologize and you can't repeat that. Unfortunately, there was a bite followed by, I think, a headbutt and a takedown. And this isn't a good thing. It isn't a good thing. But it's important to understand that he was in a situation that was probably very unfamiliar to him. And that's even if he's been in bad situations and had a bad life. You know, that was a unique situation. And the irony was, I don't think he was looking for a way out, because he showed a lot of character in terms of all the punches that he took. So, you know, clearly he was trying to turn it into a rough fight, but he went too far. It was a mistake. Hopefully he's made an apology. It wouldn't hurt making another apology or apologizing to the opponent, which I believe he did, which is good. But then if he's going to return to Misfits Boxing, it's important that he doesn't do that again. And to be honest with you, it's about learning the discipline, and it's about having a team that trains you accordingly and is able to create a boxing environment where you can handle that situation in a better way. And the irony was, in the first round, he got hit a lot and he actually handled that situation well. But it was just in the fourth round, he was absolutely knackered. So it was wrong, it was reprehensible. But the good thing that there's been an apology, and hopefully, you know, it can move on. But it's bad for the brand. It's bad for the brand. Yes, it's viral, but I think it's bad for the brand, definitely. So the next statement is, Misfits is primarily entertainment, but many fighters still take the competition seriously. Yeah, I think there are some boxers on the card that do take it seriously. Eddie Hall takes it seriously. You know, he has credibility as an athlete. Tommy Fury takes it seriously. He has credibility. His name has massive amounts of credibility, and he has credibility as a boxer. So when you look at those two boxers, there's credibility. And other people have their own credibility as well. They want to make a name for themselves. They want to win, because winning opens more doors. Remember, we talk about the front door and the back door. It opens all these economic opportunities. So the competition is real, but it's not just about intention. It's about implementation. It's about the boxing environment. It's about the trainers. I'm not familiar with a lot of the trainers, disregarding Tommy Fury because he brings a professional outfit, but some of the other trainers I'm not familiar with. That doesn't mean that they're not good trainers, but I think it's important. It's important to create a culture of good trainers, and to create a culture that the training is important, and that, you know, the training supports taking it seriously, not just through intention, but also through preparation and execution. And what about the Anthony Taylor accusation? I don't want to make any accusations against someone unless it's proven. So all we can say is that it seems like a very unfortunate situation. I wouldn't assume that Anthony Taylor is lying. So hopefully it's just an unfortunate situation where the substance that was rubbed onto the body got onto the gloves and then onto the eyes. And that can happen because, remember, they were holding a lot. There was a lot of friction. And you can see that that could happen. So hopefully this has been, it's the unintended consequence. But there needs to be clarification. And I think this is going to be a testament of how Misfits Boxing handles this ambiguity, because it was a massive allegation. And Anthony Taylor seemed so riled up. He was so emotionally perturbed or emotionally disturbed by the situation. So hopefully we get some closure, and, hopefully there wasn't intentional cheating, because that would be horrible. That would be horrible. But I don't want to make that accusation on someone unless it's proven significantly. The next statement is the event generated huge attention for Misfits, although controversies raised questions about credibility. And I guess, there was lots of viral moments. And let's face it, it is entertaining. And some people love the entertainment. The virality creates attention, and there's an attention economy. Capitalism, attention economy, virality. There's a relationship there that's important to recognize. With regards to credibility, that's a difficult one, because clearly there's a distinction between Misfits Boxing and boxing. So therefore, when we talk about the credibility within Misfits Boxing, it's going to be contextually different to the credibility in boxing. However, Misfits Boxing will probably, I would assume, want to have some form of credibility. And when you have viral moments, if the viral moments is based on negative acts, to me, I'm assuming that affects the credibility. But the question is, does credibility matter to Misfits Boxing? Clearly, the main premise, the emphasis is entertainment. And for the entertainment to be able to prosper, there needs to be viral moments. But can you walk that line between credibility within the Misfits Boxing context and have that element or have those viral moments for the boxing business to persevere? So part of boxing philosophy is understanding and asking questions. So I thought, to finish this, I'm just going to highlight 10 questions with 10 answers. And we'll start with the most basic questions and move up. Because, generally we focus on more serious boxing matters. But I thought this Misfits Boxing scenario or chapter is interesting. So here we go. So let's start off with something very basic. What is Misfits Boxing? What is it? So Misfits Boxing is a crossover boxing promotion which includes influencers, athletes, musicians, and celebrities. And that's fundamentally the idea. And who created Misfits Boxing? Who created it? So Misfits Boxing was co-founded by KSI and operates in partnership with DAZN. So they actually have, I don't know if you can call it a collaboration, because I'm assuming collaboration and partnership are different, but they have a partnership with DAZN. So it's a serious economic engine. And why? Why is Misfits Boxing so popular? Well, it's popular because it combines boxing with social media, rivalries, and entertainment that attracts younger audiences. And when you think of influencers have massive followings. So every time you have an influencer versus an influencer, you're kind of combining multifarious followings. So I would say that's one of the reasons why it's popular. So if John is fighting Peter and John has 10 million followers and Peter has 10 million followers, now you've got 20 million new followers potentially in the Misfits Boxing funnel, as well as the core audience. And how is Misfits different from professional boxing? Well, Misfits focuses on personalities and entertainment rather than traditional rankings and championships. So boxing is entertainment, but it's also a product of mastery. So when you take a fighter like Bivol's the product of, decades of mastery. He's been boxing since he was young, and he's got loads of trophies, and he's been through a program, he's been through a system, and he's operated at an elite level. Where in Misfits Boxing, you can literally just jump into the ring, with a camp. So you haven't gone through the training, you haven't gone through the apprenticeship that a professional boxer has gone through. So there's various different levels. So you got the Misfits level, and then you got like the high boxing level. And has Misfits helped boxing to grow? I guess some people would disagree with that and say, no, it hasn't, or it's helped it to grow in the wrong way. But you can argue that the argument or the answer is yes, because it's introduced many new fans to boxing who may not have watched the sport otherwise. So in other words, to put that in context, let's say someone starts watching Misfits Boxing and they enjoy it. That could lead them to watch fighters like Tyson Fury. It could lead them to watch fighters like Bivol. And then it could lead them to watch greats like Roy Jones Jr., Evander Holyfield, Rocky Marciano, Muhammad Ali, Pernell Whitaker, Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Robinson, Sugar Ray Leonard, etc. So it can be like an introductory phase into other things. Now, should professional boxers compete in Misfits? To me, that depends on the context, because when you have professional boxers engaging in Misfits, you have to be careful of mismatches, because a professional boxer is going to destroy a general Misfits practitioner, generally speaking. For example, Tommy Fury is a professional boxer, but there are levels to professional boxing, and you have boxers that were professional that have retired. That changes the dynamic. Imagine a fighter who was a British champion but then is retired for 10 years. That changes the context somewhat. But if you have a world champion going into Misfits, I think that would be completely inappropriate on every level. I can't think of a level where that would work unless you create like a load of restrictions. And even then, I think it would be a total mismatch. So professional boxers, it depends where they are in their career. Take Floyd Mayweather, one of the greatest boxers of all time. He will box an influencer, but that's an exhibition. And he's, 5 years, maybe, or longer away from his prime. So these matches are conditioned a certain way. You have to be very careful when you bring in professional boxers, and preferably you want to bring in professional boxers outside of their prime, or they're just going to destroy everyone, and it's not going to be fun. Or it might be fun to the boxing purists, but not fun to other people. So what makes Misfits Boxing so successful? I guess a successful Misfits Boxing event has that balance, and that balance is competitive fights, entertaining personalities, and memorable moments. I guess it's about building a narrative. The fight week, you want to build a narrative. You want to convince the public that, that people don't like each other. And when you have the controversy and the viral moments, it builds the event. I guess the familiarity, I know that when I'm more familiar with boxers, I'm more emotionally engaged into the event. So then there's that, but then there's the competitive elements of fights. Matchmaking is a big part of boxing. And it's a massive part of Misfits Boxing, because you'll get that, disproportionate levels of talent. And what are the biggest criticisms of Misfits? I guess some critics will argue that some events prioritize drama and publicity over sporting credibility. But if you're a business and part of that business is creating viral moments and you're part of the attention economy, then of course you're going to prioritize drama over sporting credibility, over boxing mastery. The point is, you need to maintain the virality for the business survival, which is essential, but you also want there to be some form of boxing credibility. I think you do that by harnessing a great boxing environment. So if you have, great trainers or good trainers, and you have this boxing environment or some type of regulation, I don't know what type of regulation you can implement, but if you have a culture of excellence will enable people to be the best versions or the best boxers that they can be. And that's the best thing that you can hope for within Misfits. And then you've got, can Misfits fighters become legitimate boxers? Some Misfits boxers have improved significantly and therefore have developed genuine boxing skills through training and experience. But I guess here is the premise. There are different types of Misfits boxers. There are Misfits boxers that are just coming for the money and the fame. And then there are people that genuinely develop a passion for the sport. They surround themselves in a really great boxing environment, and then they grow exponentially. So some people that enter Misfits Boxing, they'll get that bug, they'll get that hunger, they'll get that passion, they'll get that purpose. Remember that there's a side effect to boxing. One of the side effects is getting in shape, because boxing requires a tremendous level of dedication and discipline, and that can change your life in a positive way. And then finally, will Misfits Boxing continue to grow? I think, Misfits is likely to grow because of the major personalities. And when you have the major personalities, there's always going to be a relationship with having those viral moments. I guess the importance is having those viral moments, but also improving the fight quality, while maintaining those high levels of entertainment. So if the entertainment goes down, then you're going to have, if you have no entertainment, no virality, then you have not a functioning business. But you want to have the virality, which is predicated on the personalities. You want to have those viral moments. You want to have that great entertainment, but you want to up the levels in terms of the boxing. You want the levels to increasingly get better and better. So that's the end of the video. Now I'm trying to build a digital boxing community. That means I'm interested in your comments, I'm interested in your questions, and I'm interested in your observations. Now, if you want to support the channel, simply like and subscribe and click the hype button. And if you want to watch more content like this, then simply click here or click here. As always, thanks for your time. It is much appreciated.